You ever asked your woman a simple question and suddenly got a 5-minute speech about things you didn't even ask for? Men, here's the truth. When her words get longer, your trust gets weaker. Because behind every sweet sentence, there could be a crack. One that costs you your peace, your dignity, even your relationship. The danger isn't what she admits, it's what she avoids. The gaps she fills with too much detail or with silence that feels heavier than the truth itself. And here's the twist. The first words she uses when she's cheating aren't random, they're patterns. Once you know them, you'll never be fooled again. As a psychologist and relationship coach, I've spent years helping men decode the hidden truths behind a woman's words. And I can tell you, those first phrases she uses when she's cheating are never accidental. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe, hit like, and share your own story in the comments. Have you ever noticed a strange phrase or reaction that made you suspicious? Because what I'm about to reveal will give you the tools to finally make sense of those uneasy moments you've ignored for too long. Number 1. When a woman feels the need to over-explain. You ask her a simple question. Something as innocent as, "What time did you get home last night?" And instead of a straightforward answer, she launches into a 5-minute monologue that sounds like a press release. She'll tell you about traffic, who she ran into at the store, why she stopped at the gas station, and what color shoes her coworker was wearing. Now let me be blunt. Over-explaining is not natural. It's not how people respond when they're at peace with themselves. When someone adds too many unnecessary details, it's often because they're trying to convince you of something that doesn't sit right with them. Psychology has proven this. Lying takes effort. The brain works overtime to build a believable story. And in the rush to sound convincing, liars tend to overshare. But here's the catch. Details don't make a story true. They just make it heavy. And the heavier a story becomes, the easier it is to spot the cracks. I remember a conversation with a man named John, 52, an engineer, who shared how he first spotted this change in his wife. For years, his wife's daily recap was simple. I went to work, then yoga, then came home. No fluff, no theatrics. But one evening, he casually asked, "So, how was your day?" Suddenly, she gave him a 20-minute rundown. Meetings, errands, co-workers, even what brand of tea she had in the break room. At first, John brushed it off as her being in a chatty mood. But as the weeks went by, he realized something. Every time her answers turned into a speech, it was when she'd been somewhere she didn't want him to question. And eventually, he discovered she had been spending time with someone else, someone she never mentioned in those long stories. This is the trap, gentlemen. When you're overwhelmed with too much information, your instinct is to stop digging. You accept the narrative because it sounds complete. That's exactly what she's counting on. So what's the move? First, don't confront her in the heat of the moment. If you say, "Why are you giving me so many details?" she'll immediately get defensive and double down. Instead, stay calm. Listen. Pay attention to her body language. Does she look away, fidget, or rush through parts of the story? Notice how her explanations change over time. A real memory doesn't need revisions, but a fabricated one almost always does. Here's a practical tip. Use silence as your weapon. Ask a short, neutral question, then stop talking. Don't nod excessively. Don't fill the space. Just let the quiet sit there. People who are hiding something feel uncomfortable with silence. They'll keep talking to cover the gap. And the more they talk, the more likely they are to reveal the inconsistencies. Understand this. Not every long story is a lie. Some people are naturally talkative. But the red flag is when her tone shifts, when her answers feel rehearsed, or when the story is drowning in irrelevant details. That's not communication, that's camouflage. If you catch yourself in this situation, don't panic, don't accuse. Just start observing. Think of yourself as a detective, not a prosecutor. The truth has a way of leaking out, but only if you're patient enough to let her reveal it. And here's the cold reality. When she feels the need to explain what you never asked for, she's not trying to inform you. She's trying to distract you. But sometimes, she won't try to distract you with too many words. Instead, she'll flip the script and accuse you of the very thing she's hiding. Number 2. When she flips the script and accuses you. Imagine this. You walk through the door after a long day. Nothing unusual. You're just looking forward to dinner and maybe a little peace. But out of nowhere, she hits you with, "Why are you acting so weird lately? Are you hiding something from me?" Now your brain scrambles. You weren't hiding anything. You weren't acting strange. Yet suddenly you feel guilty, defensive, like you need to explain yourself. That's not an accident, it's strategy. This, my friend, is called projection. In psychology, projection is when someone takes what they're feeling or doing and throws it on you. It's the classic magician's trick. While you're busy defending yourself, you stop paying attention to what's really happening with her. Mike, a 47-year-old small business owner, learned this the hard way. His wife started questioning him constantly. "Why do you stay late at work so much? Are you texting someone else?" At first, Mike went into full defense mode. He showed her his call logs, explained every client meeting, even felt guilty for being tired when he came home. But over time, the accusations got stranger, more aggressive, and always came out of nowhere. One night, after she accused him of flirting with a waitress he barely spoke to, something clicked. He realized these attacks weren't about him at all. They were about her. Eventually, he discovered she was spending time with another man. The very thing she was accusing Mike of. This is why projection works so well. Because as men, we hate being misunderstood. When someone we love accuses us unfairly, our first instinct is to prove our innocence. But in doing so, we fall straight into the trap, defending ourselves instead of noticing her behavior. So here's the strategy. When she throws an accusation at you that doesn't make sense, don't rush to deny it. Stay calm. Look her in the eye and ask, "What do you mean by that?" Or, "Why do you think that?" These short questions flip the burden back on her. If it's projection, her argument will be thin. She'll stumble, repeat herself, or get angry that you're not biting the bait. Here's a concrete step. Track the timing. Projection usually pops up when she's feeling guilty or anxious. Notice if her accusations arrive at strange moments, when you're relaxed, when things are calm, or right after she's been unusually distant. That's not coincidence, that's cover. And let me give you a warning. Don't fight fire with fire. If you throw an accusation back at her, well, what about you? You lose the upper hand. She'll twist it into a shouting match, and you'll walk away feeling like you're the problem. Your strength is in calm observation, not emotional retaliation. Think of it like this. Projection is smoke. If you chase the smoke, you get lost. But if you stay still, you'll see where it's coming from. Remember, gentlemen, projection isn't about you. It's about her trying to unload the guilt she doesn't want to carry. Don't pick it up for her. And here's the twist. Sometimes she doesn't even need to accuse you directly. Sometimes the betrayal doesn't show up in words at all. It shows up in the pause, the heavy silence, right before she speaks. Number 3. The silence before she speaks. It's subtle, but it can scream louder than any words. You ask her a simple question. "Where were you this afternoon?" And instead of an instant reply, there's a pause. She takes a sip of water. She looks away. Maybe she fiddles with her phone or lets out a quick laugh before answering. That pause, my friend, is not just empty air. It's her brain working overtime. Psychology tells us lying is mentally expensive. The mind has to grab the question, build a believable response, and package it in a way that sounds natural, all in a split second. That's why liars often pause before answering. Their silence is the sound of gears grinding, and here's what makes it powerful. Once you notice it, you can't unsee it. that extra blink, that frozen half-second before she speaks, that sudden change in tone when the answer finally comes out. These are micro-signals that the truth and the story don't line up. Now don't get me wrong, not every pause means she's hiding something. Some people naturally think before they speak. But here's the difference. Does this silence feel heavy? Does it come with tension in her body language? Does she rush through her words afterward, or suddenly act overly calm? When the pause feels unnatural, when it doesn't match her usual rhythm, that's when you pay attention. So how do you handle it? Don't pounce. Don't interrupt her silence with nervous chatter. Let it hang. Because silence is a mirror. If she's guilty, she'll see herself in it. And often, the longer she sits in that discomfort, the more she'll reveal just to fill the void. Here's a practical move you can try. Ask a casual question and stay completely still. No nodding, no, no saving her from the awkwardness. Just observe. If her answer feels smooth and consistent over time, you can relax. But if every reply comes with that same heavy pause, you've spotted a pattern, and patterns never lie. Think of it like music. In every song, silence between the notes gives meaning to the melody. In relationships, silence before the words often reveals what the words are hiding. And here's the kicker. If you've learned to spot these pauses, you're already ahead of most men. But silence is just one piece of the puzzle. Sometimes, the truth doesn't show up in the gap between words. It shows up in a name. A name that keeps popping up again and again until you can't ignore it anymore. Number 4, when she says, "He's just a friend." At first, it sounds harmless, innocent, like there's nothing more to ask. But when you start hearing a certain name over and over, tucked casually into conversations, that's when alarm bells should go off. Maybe she mentions him at work. "Tom helped me with the report." Then, a week later, "Tom always has such funny stories." And then again, "Tom texted me today about the project." One mention feels normal. Repeated mentions? That's a pattern. Gentlemen, here's the truth. Affairs don't always begin in hotel rooms. Many of them begin in text threads, office lunches, or late-night friendly conversations. The line isn't crossed physically at first. It's crossed emotionally. And emotional betrayal can be just as destructive, sometimes worse, because it eats away at intimacy from the inside out. Let me bring this down to earth with a real story. David, a 60-year-old retired Army officer, told me about the first time he noticed something was off. His wife started talking about a coworker. Let's call him Mark. At first, it was nothing, just casual mentions. But slowly, David realized Mark's name had become a permanent guest at their dinner table. Every story seemed to include him. Every long day at work ended with a chat about Mark. David brushed it off until one evening his wife came home late. She explained it away. "I stayed talking with Mark about the project." Perfectly reasonable on the surface. But David noticed her tone was different, lighter, almost glowing. That wasn't about a project. That was about connection. And when he asked a simple question about what they discussed, she grew vague, deflecting with, "Oh, it was nothing." That nothing turned out to be everything. This is the danger of the phrase, "he's just a friend." Because when someone feels the need to clarify before you even question them, it's not reassurance. It's preemptive defense. She's trying to calm suspicion before you've even voiced it. So, what should you do if you notice this pattern? First, don't jump straight into accusations. If you go in guns blazing, "Are you cheating on me with him?" you'll only create denial and defensiveness. Instead, approach with calm curiosity. Say, "I've noticed you talk about Mark a lot lately. Is everything okay between us?" This opens the door for dialogue without making her feel cornered. Second, watch for shifts in behavior, not just words. Does she get more protective of her phone when that name shows up? Does she suddenly stop sharing parts of her day with you even though she used to? Does she come home later with thinner explanations? These are the cracks where the truth leaks through. Here's the action step. Separate the friendship from the impact. It's not wrong for her to have male friends. The real issue is whether that friend is taking up emotional space that used to belong to you. If her attention, energy, and intimacy are drifting towards someone else, the friendship isn't innocent anymore. It's a replacement. Remember, men lose their power when they ignore their instincts. If something feels off, it usually is. Don't smother it with blind trust, but also don't throw dynamite on the table. Observe. Ask calmly. Set boundaries. And here's the harsh punchline. When she says, "He's just a friend," it may be true. But if that friendship starts to erode your connection, then you're already in competition, and you didn't even know the game had started. But sometimes it's not even about another man. Sometimes the betrayal doesn't come with a name. It comes with a shift in priorities. When her life reorganizes itself in ways that quietly push you out, that's when you need to pay even closer attention. Number 5. When her priorities quietly shift. Cheating doesn't always announce itself with lipstick on the collar or suspicious late-night calls. Sometimes it sneaks in through a change in her schedule, her energy, and her focus. The woman who once carved out time for you, no matter how busy, suddenly seems to have a calendar packed with new things. At first it sounds reasonable. She says she needs more me time. She's joined a new yoga class, started hanging out with friends you've never met, or picked up projects at work that suddenly demand late hours. Individually, these things look harmless, but when you put them together, a picture starts to form. The life you once shared is quietly being reorganized, and you're no longer at the center of it. Psychology gives us a clear map here. Our priorities reveal our emotional investments. Nobody changes their priorities overnight without a reason. If she once rushed home to share a meal with you, and now she lingers after work with people you've never heard of, that's not just a lifestyle change. It's a shift in emotional gravity. Here's how you test it. Instead of accusing, observe. Has she stopped sharing the little details of her day? Does she seem distracted even when you're together? Does her phone suddenly feel like a private vault? These small changes aren't random. They're signals of distance. So, what do you do when you notice this drift? Don't jump straight into anger. That only deepens the divide. Start with open concern. I've noticed you've been really busy with new things lately. I'm glad you're exploring, but I feel like we've had less time together. Is there something on your mind? This approach forces her to choose. Either she opens up, or she avoids the conversation altogether. And avoidance itself is an answer. Here's a practical step. Reclaim shared rituals. Suggest a dinner night, a walk, or a weekend activity you used to enjoy together. If she resists consistently, it's a sign she's not just busy, she's invested elsewhere. And here's the hard truth. Space in a relationship is healthy. But when space becomes a wall that keeps you out, it's no longer independence. It's distance. Because once her priorities shift far enough, you don't need to ask where her energy is going. Her actions have already told you. It's not toward you. But even then, words and schedules can still deceive. The final and most brutal test isn't in what she says or what she does with her time. It's in how her actions and words collide. And that's where the truth can no longer hide. You've seen how words can twist, stretch, or even accuse. But here's the ultimate test. Actions. Because while her first words may spark suspicion, it's her daily patterns, her body language, and her presence that seal the truth. Words can charm, but actions never lie. When a woman is hiding something, her words may sound flawless, smooth, even comforting. But her daily behavior? That's the real scoreboard. You don't need a detective badge to see the mismatch. If her words say one thing, but her actions tell another, believe the actions. Think about it. She says, "I'm just tired." But suddenly she stops sharing the little stories that once connected you. She says, "Everything's fine," but her body is distant, her eyes elsewhere. She swears she's committed, yet she avoids simple moments of closeness that used to come naturally. This is where men get trapped. Too many of us want to believe the words because they soothe us. But comfort isn't truth. If her actions consistently pull away while her words keep luring you back, that's not reassurance. It's manipulation. So, what's the solution? Stop measuring the relationship by what she says. Measure it by how she shows up. Does she make time for you without excuses? Does her affection flow naturally, or does it feel forced and conditional? Is her presence nourishing or draining? These questions reveal the reality words can't cover. Here's a practical step. Step back from the noise. Write down what she says and then write down what she does. Compare them. If the two don't align, you've got your answer. No confrontation required. Because at the end of the day, love doesn't hide in speeches. It shows up in consistent habits, in the small ways someone chooses you again and again. And if her actions don't choose you, her words never will. And here's the final kicker. Lies are heavy. They eventually collapse under their own weight. Sooner or later, the mismatch between words and actions always cracks open. The only question is, will you be strong enough to see it when it happens? We've walked through the 5 warning signs, the first words and hidden patterns that reveal when a woman may be betraying you. Over-explaining, projection, the heavy silence before she speaks, the phrase, "he's just a friend," the quiet shift in priorities, and finally, the undeniable clash between words and actions. These aren't random moments, they're signals, subtle at first, easy to dismiss, but together they form a blueprint of truth. If you learn to read it, you'll see what most men miss. But let me be clear, not every pause, not every new hobby, not every long explanation means she's cheating. Life brings stress, change, distraction. That's why your role isn't to become paranoid, it's to become aware, because awareness gives you choice. The choice to ask calmly, to observe without panic, and to decide what you will and will not accept. The truth always comes to light. Lies are heavy, and they eventually collapse under their own weight. The real question is, will you recognize the signs before that collapse? Or will you blind yourself until it's too late? A strong man doesn't cling to words alone. He measures love by consistency, by daily actions, by the way she shows up when no one is watching. He doesn't chase answers in speeches. He reads the reality in front of him. That's how you keep your power, not by controlling her, but by controlling yourself. Because relationships should be a space of trust, not a courtroom where you're always on trial. And if you see these words and patterns appearing, take them seriously. They're not accidents, they're warnings. If this video spoke to you, subscribe, hit like, and share your own experiences in the comments. Tell me if you've ever heard these first words and how you handled them. Your story might be the wake-up call another man needs. Remember this, the first words of betrayal are never random. They're the opening lines of a story you can either catch early or get crushed by later. The truth always comes to light. The only question is, will you be ready when it does?